Before I started college, my mom emptied my bank account, and now she's asking me to cover my stepsister's dorm costs. I'm 23, fresh out of college, and today, out of the blue, my mom, who I haven't spoken to in months, reaches out. But instead of saying, "Hey, how are you?" or "Congratulations on graduating," she skips all that and jumps straight into, "I need $2,000 for your stepsister's dorm fees." Yep, you read that right. No pleasantries, no check-in, just a demand for cash. Let me give you some background, because otherwise you might think, what's the big deal? It's family. Well, this isn't exactly a typical family situation. My mom remarried when I was 16, and her new husband made it clear from the start that he had no interest in me. He has 2 kids, Ashley, who's now 17, and Parker, 14. From day one, they've been treated like royalty, while I was pushed to the sidelines. My mom, who had always been present before, acted like I disappeared the moment she married him. I get that blending families can be tricky, but she didn't even try. I'll never forget when I graduated high school. My grandparents gave me $2,000 as a gift, and I had saved up another $2,000 from part-time jobs. I felt like I was set. $4,000 to use for college or maybe even some fun. Then, one day, I checked my bank account, and it was empty. Every penny was gone. I confronted my mom, thinking there had to be some mistake. Back then, she was still a co-owner on the account because I hadn't switched it over yet. And do you know what she said? She looked me straight in the eye and told me she took the money. Her reason? She said it was punishment for not respecting her new husband and his kids and for acting out, whatever that meant. I was furious. That money was supposed to be for my future, and she took it like it was nothing. So I packed my things and moved in with my grandparents, the only people who seemed to care about me. From that point on, I barely kept in touch with her. Fast forward a few years. I've graduated, I'm trying to get my life together, and then, out of nowhere, she calls, asking for $2,000 to pay for Ashley's private dorm. Apparently, Ashley needs a private room because she can't handle having a roommate. Seriously, what happened to just dealing with dorm life like everyone else? So I told her no, no way. And you know what she said? "You can't say no. We're family. You have to help." Are you kidding me? She didn't even ask how I was doing or acknowledge the fact that we hadn't spoken in months. She went straight to the money talk like I'm her personal ATM. I hung up on her. I wasn't going to sit there and listen to her guilt trip me. But let me tell you, the entitlement was unbelievable. I've been out here working hard, building a life for myself with no help from her, while she's been living it up with her new family. And now she thinks I'm just going to hand over thousands of dollars? Nope. Not happening. And honestly, this isn't the first time she's pulled something like this. Ever since my stepdad came into the picture, I've been invisible. She bent over backward for him and his kids, while I became an afterthought. It's not like she was a terrible mom when I was younger, but after she got remarried, it was like I stopped existing. She didn't come to my school events, stopped asking how I was doing, just stopped caring. One Christmas, after I moved in with my grandparents, she didn't even invite me over. Instead, she sent me a card that said, "Hope you're doing well. Love, Mom." No apology, no mention of missing me, just a generic card. It was like she cared more about appearances than being an actual parent. And now, after everything she's done, she has the nerve to call me and ask for money for Ashley's dorm. Not a chance. I don't owe her anything. Not after she stole my savings. Not after she abandoned me. It's sad, because when I was younger, I really wanted a relationship with her. I tried to reach out and make things work, but it was always one-sided. She was too focused on her new family to care. And now, after years of silence, she thinks I'm going to give her $2,000? No way. Some people never change. They just take and take, thinking they're entitled to whatever you have. But I've learned. I'm not the same kid she used to push around. I've moved on, built my own life, and I'm not letting her guilt me into anything. After that call, I blocked her on everything. And honestly, it feels like a huge weight has been lifted. I don't need that kind of negativity. If she tries reaching out again, she's in for a rude awakening. I'm done being the backup plan, the go-to when things don't work out. They can figure it out on their own. A few days later, just when I thought she might have gotten the message, my phone rang again. It was her. I didn't want to answer, but for some reason, I did. Maybe hoping she'd apologize or act like a normal human being. Spoiler, she didn't. She started with, "Listen, I talked to your stepdad, and we've come up with a new plan." She said it like she was doing me a favor. She went on to explain that Ashley had to have a private dorm because sharing with others would be too uncomfortable for her. Apparently, communal bathrooms and roommates were beneath her, so their plan was for Ashley to stay in a fancy 2-bedroom dorm with her own bathroom. And guess who they expected to pay for it? Yep, me, again. I almost burst out laughing. The total cost of this so-called luxury dorm arrangement is $3,800 per semester, and they expect me to contribute $1,000 every month to help cover it. That's $11,000 a year for a dorm I'll never set foot in, for a stepsister who barely acknowledges me. Ridiculous, right? I straight up asked my mom, "Why is this even my responsibility?" That's when she switched gears and went full guilt mode. She started saying things like, "You've never contributed to this family, and it's time you made up for your mistakes." Mistakes? What mistakes? I haven't done anything to these people. Then she had the audacity to claim I've been freeloading off my grandparents, as though I wasn't invited to live with them. My grandparents were happy to support me after everything she pulled. But, in her twisted view, I'm somehow indebted to her for the little she's done for me. Never mind how much she's done for her new family. She went on, ranting about how I owe them because I'm not part of the family anymore. Like it's my fault. Let's be clear, they're the ones who excluded me and made me feel like I didn't belong. And now she wants me to feel bad for leaving that toxic environment? No thanks. At that point, I could feel my frustration boiling over. But instead of letting her drag me down, I hit her with a question of my own. When are you planning to pay back the $4,000 you took from me in high school? As soon as I said that, she lost it. She started yelling, calling me selfish and ungrateful, and screaming about how she did everything for me. And this is how I repay her, by bringing up the past. I told her plainly, "You never apologized for taking that money. You didn't even admit you were wrong. If anyone owes anything, it's you." But she wasn't hearing it. She was too busy shouting about how I've abandoned the family and how my refusal to help is ruining Ashley's future. According to her, going to a public college with a shared dorm would destroy Ashley's entire life. Sure, because that's totally realistic. What's even more infuriating is how she wasn't asking for help. She was demanding it. No please, no could you consider helping? It was all about what I'm expected to do, as if cleaning up their mess is somehow my job. And don't get me started on Ashley acting like she's too good for a regular dorm experience. Meanwhile, I went through college sharing a cramped room with a stranger and made it out just fine. By then, I was done. I told her, "I'm not giving you a dime. Figure it out without me." Then I hung up. It felt like a bad case of déjà vu, but even worse this time. I was shaking, not because of the money, but because of her sheer entitlement and total lack of respect for me, my life, and the boundaries I've tried so hard to set. Even though I ended the call, I knew it wouldn't be the last of it. My mom's always been stubborn, the kind of person who keeps pushing until she gets her way. And, sure enough, later that night, she sent me a long-winded text. It was practically an essay about how I'm tearing the family apart and how I need to step up now that I'm earning money. She kept going on about how I need to pay for my sins and start contributing to the family again, like I'm some kind of prodigal child. The way she twisted everything to make me the villain was almost impressive, but I wasn't falling for it. I've dealt with her manipulation for years, and I wasn't about to let her guilt me into covering something that has nothing to do with me. So, I blocked her. On my phone, social media, email, everything. I couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't an easy decision. As much as I'd like to say I don't care about her or what she thinks, a part of me does. A small part still wishes things could have been different, that she might actually see me as her kid instead of a walking wallet. But I know that's not going to happen. She's made her choice, and now I've made mine. Still, the nerve of her is unbelievable. After practically erasing me from her life for her new family, she expects me to fork over money for her stepdaughter's fancy dorm? Absolutely not. I'm done letting her drag me back into that mess. I've got my own life to focus on, and I won't let her or anyone else hold me back. I'm over the drama, the guilt trips, and being the backup plan when her new family can't foot the bill. So, that's where I'm at. I don't know if she'll try to contact me again, but if she does, she'll quickly find out I'm not playing along anymore. I've got bigger priorities than paying for someone else's spoiled kid to live in luxury. After I blocked my mom, I thought it was over. Done and dusted, right? Wrong. I should have known better. Nothing's ever that simple with her. A few days passed, and I was finally starting to feel some relief. The constant stress and anxiety from her calls and texts were gone. But then I got a message from my Aunt Lisa. Now, Lisa is the only person in my mom's family who's ever supported me, so I thought she might just be checking in. Nope. Her message said something like, "Hey, your mom's been calling me non-stop. She says you've blocked her and is really upset. She wants to talk to you, and I think you should hear her out." I practically rolled my eyes. Hear her out? She just wants money, Lisa. That's all this is about. But Lisa is one of those people who always tries to keep the peace, so I wasn't shocked she was trying to mediate. Still, I couldn't believe my mom had dragged her into this. I replied, "She's not upset. I'm not giving her money for Ashley's dorm. There's nothing to discuss." Lisa, being Lisa, tried to reason with me. She said, "Maybe you should talk to her and set some boundaries." I told her, "The boundary is already set. I'm not paying for anything, and I'm done with the guilt trips." I could tell Lisa was uncomfortable being in the middle of this, so I tried not to take my frustration out on her. She wrapped up the conversation with, "Just think about it, okay?" I said I would, but let's be honest, there was nothing to consider. I wasn't going to cave, and I certainly wasn't going to give my mom the satisfaction of thinking she could guilt me into anything. Then, a couple of days later, it happened. I was heading home from work when I saw her, my mom, standing outside my apartment building like she was staking it out. I had no clue how she even found out where I lived. Maybe she got the address from Aunt Lisa, or figured it out some other way. Either way, there she was, looking furious and clearly ready for a confrontation. I froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. What do you even say when your mom shows up out of the blue after you've blocked her? But she didn't give me much time to think. Before I could even pull out my key, she stormed up to me and said, "We need to talk." I sighed, already drained and not in the mood for another argument, but it was obvious she wasn't going to leave until she got whatever it was she came for. "Fine," I said, "but if this is about money, The answer is no. She crossed her arms, clearly unhappy with my attitude, and snapped, "I didn't raise you to be so disrespectful." I almost laughed out loud. This is the same woman who stole my savings, prioritized her new family over me, and only contacts me when she wants something. And she's talking about respect? "I don't owe you anything," I said, doing my best to stay calm. "And I definitely don't owe Ashley a private dorm room." Her face contorted in frustration, as though she couldn't believe I was standing my ground. "Ashley deserves this. You're doing well now. You can afford to help." That's when I lost it. "Are you serious? You took my money when I needed it for college? You didn't care about my future back then, but now I'm supposed to care about hers." She tried to interrupt, but I wasn't finished. "You stopped inviting me to family events. You replaced me with them. And now, you think I'm just going to swoop in and bail you out when things get tight? No way. I'm not part of your new family, remember?" She stood there, fuming, but didn't say anything right away. For a second, I thought maybe I'd finally gotten through to her, that she might realize how unfair all of this was. But no. Instead, she fired back. "You've always been selfish. I tried to give you a better life, and all you've done is throw it back in my face." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Selfish? After everything? I wasn't about to let her rewrite the narrative to make herself the victim. "You didn't give me anything. You took from me. You took my savings, my time, my peace. You chose them over me, and now you're dealing with the consequences. That's on you." She stepped closer, trying to intimidate me, and said coldly, "You owe this family. You owe Ashley. She's your sister." "She's not my sister," I shot back, "and I don't owe her or you anything." That was the moment I realized there was no fixing this relationship. This wasn't about money. It was about control. She couldn't stand that I wasn't under her influence anymore, that I had built a life without her and didn't need her approval. She was grasping at whatever she could to try to pull me back in. I turned to leave, but before I could, she grabbed my arm. "If you walk away now, don't expect to ever be welcomed back," she warned. I pulled my arm free, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "Good." Then, I walked into my building, leaving her standing there in the cold. As soon as I got inside, a flood of emotions hit me. Relief, anger, sadness. It felt like I'd finally shut the door on something that had been holding me back for years. But at the same time, it was my mom, the woman who raised me, even if she hadn't done a great job of it. Part of me felt guilty, but the rest of me knew I'd made the right choice. I hadn't walked away from my family. They had walked away from me a long time ago. I was just the last one to realize it. Later that night, I got another text from Aunt Lisa. She asked what had happened, and I gave her the short version. Lisa said she understood and didn't agree with my mom's actions, but still hoped we could work things out someday. I didn't have the heart to tell her I was done, that there wouldn't be some grand reconciliation in the future. I just said, "Thanks," and left it at that. Because, honestly, I don't think there's any fixing this. And for the first time, I'm okay with that. After the showdown with my mom outside my apartment, I thought it was finally over. I made it clear I wasn't giving her money, and we had our final argument. That should have been the end of it, right? Of course not. Nothing is ever that simple with her. About a week later, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I don't answer calls from numbers I don't recognize, but for some reason, I picked this one up. The moment I heard his voice, I knew who it was. My stepdad, Richard. I hadn't heard from him directly in years. At first, I thought maybe he was calling to make peace. But no, he was just as angry as my mom. "So, I heard you've been disrespecting your mother," he started. No greeting, no pleasantries, just straight to accusations. I felt my jaw tighten. I wanted to hang up, but curiosity got the better of me. Disrespecting her? I asked, trying to stay calm. I'm not disrespecting her. I'm just not giving her money. He let out a sarcastic laugh, and I could practically hear him rolling his eyes through the phone. You think this is about money? This is about family. You've turned your back on your family, and now you won't even help Ashley when she needs it. Here we go again. I could feel my patience wearing thin. I didn't abandon anyone. You all pushed me out years ago, and Ashley isn't my responsibility. There was a pause, and I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd drop it. But of course, he didn't. You're selfish, he said, his voice dripping with judgment. We've done everything for you, and this is how you repay us? By turning your back on your mother and Ashley? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Everything for me? They ignored me, stole from me, and treated me like an afterthought once they had their perfect family. Now, they expected me to fix their problems? You didn't do anything for me, I snapped. You took from me. My mom stole my savings, and you both acted like I didn't exist once you had your new family. Now, suddenly, I'm supposed to save the day. He cut me off. You're not a kid anymore. It's time to stop acting like one. You need to grow up and understand that family means sacrifice. You owe this family. That word, owe, set me off. No, Richard, I don't owe you anything. If anyone owes something, it's you two, for treating me like garbage for years. I could hear his anger building on the other end, but I didn't care. I was done being polite. I wasn't the scared teenager they used to walk all over. This isn't over, he said, his tone low and threatening, as if he thought he could intimidate me. We're family, and we'll always be family, whether you like it or not. I didn't bother responding. I hung up the call, and as soon as I did, a wave of relief washed over me. It felt like I'd finally closed the door on something toxic. I had set a firm boundary, and there was no going back. But of course, it wasn't the end. Just a few days later, I received a text from Ashley. Yep, now even she was getting involved. Her message wasn't as confrontational as my mom's or Richard's, but it was still packed with guilt-tripping. It said something along the lines of, "Hey, I know things have been tense, but I really need help with this dorm situation. I don't understand why you're making this so difficult. It's just money, and it's not like you can't afford it." I stared at my phone for a solid minute, shaking my head in disbelief. It's just money. The entitlement was staggering. She genuinely believed I owed her, like it was a given, like I was some rich benefactor whose sole purpose was to fund her life. I thought about replying, but honestly, what was the point? None of them were willing to listen. They all lived in their own bubble where I was the villain for not playing along. So, I deleted the message and blocked her too. It was clear that no matter what I did, they wouldn't see my side. To them, family meant a one-way relationship where I was expected to give while they took, offering nothing in return. And if I didn't give them what they wanted, I became the bad guy. But here's the truth. They weren't my family anymore, not in the ways that mattered. Family is supposed to be about support, love, and mutual respect, none of which they ever showed me. Sure, it hurt. I won't pretend it didn't. There was a time when I would have done anything to gain their approval, to feel like I belonged. But that time had passed. I wasn't that kid anymore, desperate for their love. I had built a life of my own, and I didn't need their validation. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on what family truly means. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that family is everything, that blood ties are unbreakable. But sometimes, the people you're related to are the ones who hurt you the most. And when that happens, you have to make a choice. Do you keep letting them hurt you because they're family? Or do you cut ties and move forward? even if it means walking away from the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. I chose to walk away. It wasn't easy, but it was the right decision for me. I wasn't going to let them drag me down anymore. I wasn't going to let them use me. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't on edge, bracing for the next call, the next guilt trip, or the next demand for money. I was free, and it felt incredible. After everything that happened with my mom, Richard, and even Ashley, I thought it was finally over. Surely they'd leave me alone after all that. But, surprise, they didn't. These people just don't know when to stop. I had blocked my mom, Richard, and Ashley, cutting them out of my life. For a while, it worked. A couple of weeks went by without any drama, and I started to relax. I wasn't constantly on edge, waiting for the next guilt trip or demand for money. For the first time in ages, life felt normal. I focused on work, spent time with friends, and just lived my life, the way you're supposed to when you're not dealing with toxic family members. Then, one day, I came home from work to find a letter in my mailbox. No return address, just my name on the front. I almost didn't open it, but something about it felt off, so I did. And guess what? It was from my mom. But it wasn't a card, an apology, or even a regular letter. No, it was a legal notice. She was threatening to take me to court. For what, you ask? Family obligations. In her mind, I was financially responsible for helping Ashley with her college expenses. She tried to make it seem like I had a legal duty to pay for Ashley's dorm fees because we're family. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Who does that? Who goes from begging for money to trying to sue their own kid? It was so absurd I actually laughed out loud, standing there in my living room holding this ridiculous letter. It felt like a bad joke, but it wasn't. She had gone to a lawyer, had this whole thing drafted, and was now claiming I had a financial obligation to Ashley simply because I was doing well and she needed help. The letter was full of language about how family must support family and how I was morally obligated to step in because of my supposed success. Success? I'm 23, fresh out of college, struggling to pay rent and figure out life like everyone else. And even if I were successful, that wouldn't mean I owed them anything, especially not after the way they treated me. I called my grandparents immediately, and they were just as shocked as I was. My grandma actually gasped when I told her. My grandpa, on the other hand, was livid. I could hear the quiet anger in his voice, the kind that means someone's about to explode. "They've lost their damn minds," he said. "Don't you worry. We'll take care of this." And he meant it. My grandparents contacted a lawyer friend of theirs right away. Within a couple of days, I had a meeting with the lawyer, who assured me the case was a joke. There was no legal basis for what my mom was trying to do. Apparently, guilt trips don't hold up in court. Even though I knew I was in the clear, it was still incredibly stressful. The fact that my mom would go to such lengths just to get money out of me was mind-blowing. I always knew she was manipulative, but this was a whole new level. The day after meeting with the lawyer, I received another letter, this time handwritten by my mom. It was her last-ditch effort to win me over. The tone was completely different from the legal notice. In this one, she played the victim, saying things like, "I never wanted it to come to this. I just need you to understand how much we need your help." She even threw in the classic, "I'm still your mother, and I love you no matter what." As if that would erase everything she'd done. It was pathetic. The switch from threatening me with legal action to begging for forgiveness was so transparent. It was clear she didn't care about me, only about what I could give her. I didn't bother responding. I didn't even finish reading the letter. I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. At that point, I was truly done. I had already cut them out of my life, but this court stunt took it to a level where there was no coming back. I wasn't going to give her another chance to manipulate me or pull me into more drama. The lawyer handled everything, sending a formal response that essentially told my mom to back off and that her case had no merit. A few days later, I heard she had dropped the whole thing. No surprise there. She probably realized it was going nowhere and didn't want to waste more money. Since then, things have finally settled down. I haven't heard from my mom, Richard, or Ashley, and it feels like a huge weight has been lifted. For years, I let them control my life with their guilt trips and manipulation. Now, for the first time, I'm truly free. Looking back, I'm glad I stood my ground. It wasn't easy to cut off my family, but it was the right decision. I deserve better than being treated like a backup plan, only valued when they need something. Family should be about love and support, not taking advantage of each other. I still have a long way to go in figuring out my life, but at least now I can do it without them dragging me down. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing. I'm never letting them back into my life. Not after everything they've done. Sure, it's sad. I wish things could have been different. But at the end of the day, you have to protect your peace. Sometimes, that means walking away, even from the people who are supposed to love you the most. And that's okay. I'm moving forward, and I'm doing it on my own terms.